Good afternoon, friends. We started discussing about the Windows characteristics. So here we are discussing about the various advantages of Windows. So we started with the first one, that is presentation of different levels of information, presentation of multiple kinds of information. Then the third advantage is sequential presentation of levels or kinds of information, then access to different sources of information. So now we'll begin with understanding the advantage of combining multiple sources of information. So here you can combine the information from different sources into a single source. So if you have opened many text documents, then you can club all that text information in a single document. So that is another advantage. Then if you just try to imagine a situation where you are allowed to use a single window. So by just using a single window, we can perform a single task. So if you have a provision of using multiple windows, then you can perform multitasking. So that is another advantage of Windows. Then the reminding. Windows can be used to remind the viewer of things likely to be used in the near future. For here we have Google Calendar, then Windows Calendar, so you can schedule activities, then you can set the alarm, then based on your settings you will be reminded. So that is another advantage of Windows. Then monitoring is you can changes both internal and externals can be monitored. Data in one window can be modified and its effect on data in another window can be studied. So okay, when you're copying or when you're deleting files, then you can see how much of portion the files have been deleted, or how much percentage of information has been copied. Or if you are trying to display the data using visual representation, so if you make any changes in the data, simultaneously you can see those changes in the graph also. So that is another advantage of using the Windows. Then multiple representation of the same task. So same task can be represented using multiple uh, representation. So for example, alternate drafts of a speech, different version of a screen can be presented, or different graphical presentation. Same data can be represented using different graphs. So that is another advantage. So these are some of the advantages of using the Windows. So now we will see the constraint, some of the disadvantages. The problems with the windowing system can be attributed to three factors. The first one is historical considerations, the second one is hardware limitations, and the third one is human limitations. So we will begin by historical considerations. Historically, system developers have been much more interested in solving hardware problems than in user considerations. There has been very little research addressing design issues and their impact on usability of Windows systems. So these computers came into existence maybe in 1950s or 1960s. During initially 2 or 3 decades, lot of considerations were given to the hardware development. Okay, very less research was happened for the user interface design or software development. Only later 1980s, okay, the researchers started giving importance to the software development or the user interface, especially uh, Apple, okay, started the Apple, then IBM, then Microsoft, all these came up with their user interface mid 80s. So that is a point where a lot of interest was shown to started to the software development. So this lack of guidelines make it difficult to develop acceptable and agreeable Windows standards. Standardization is also made more difficult by the complexity and range of alternative alternatives available to the designer. Now a lot of alternatives are available. Standardization has been happening. We have already discussed many guidelines of style designs in the previous module. So the next one is hardware limitations. Many of today's screens are not large enough to take full advantage of Windows capabilities or windowing capabilities. Some evidence that many users of personal computers expand their windows to cover the full screen. So many a times we have to expand the windows so that it can cover the full screen. Also, the slower processing speeds and smaller memory sizes of some computers may inhibit the use of Windows. Again, now these days, since a lot of graphics is being used into Windows, so our display capabilities also plays a major role. The kind of processor, the kind the memory capacity, that is RAM capacity, altogether plays a major role in utilizing these modern windows because modern windows come up with large sizes. Okay, so to sustain that size we should have a modern hardware. Okay, so that is the second point. Then the third point is human limitations. Windowing system, because it is more complex, requires the learning and using of more operations. So since this is a modern concept, see, we are acquainted with Windows since many years, so we can easily manipulate the windows. However, just a person who has never used this kind of windowing concepts, for him it becomes extremely difficult for him to understand, okay, use it for the first time. So he requires some sort of training. So this is also another disadvantage or constraint. So there are three constraints. Then some other limitations are necessity for Windows borders to consume valuable screen time. So for example, you could see this border has taken some space. Okay, so this can be avoided. Then we will begin by components of a window. A typical window may be composed of up to a dozen or so elements. So many elements. For example, if you look at this window, it consisted of many elements. Okay, so there is a tool bar here, then there is another bar, then there is one more bar, so you can just manipulate them. You can see here, show file tools, okay, show edit tools, show page navigation. So if you go to the view, then you can view show or hide. You see tools pane, you can see, so like that. Okay. A typical window may be composed of a dozen or so elements. Some appear on all the windows, others only on certain kinds of windows or under certain conditions. So I shown you. So these are some basic things, default things what we get when we open the PDF. However, you can change according to your need. Most windowing systems provide consistent locations for elements in their own windows. For example, you open any window file systems or any applications, usually you can see this file always, whether in any Windows systems also you can see this is a file. It is available at the leftmost corner here. In most of the applications it will be available in a consistent place. Okay, description of a typical window or component and their purposes, with emphasis on the most popular windowing system, Microsoft Windows. So the most popular windowing system is Microsoft Windows. Specifically reviewed will be primarily Windows, secondary windows, and a form of secondary window called as a dialog box. So this is basically a primary window. I will, in the next video, I will show you what is a primary window, secondary window, and dialog box. Okay, thank you.